beyond 3D.
Good Saturday evening, one and all. Welcome to this week's edition of Beyond 3D. Matt and Clint sitting here in Studio 2 at RWP 98.7 Peninsula Radio. Hopefully you're all quite well out there. Clint, how have you been this week?
Isn't the world just getting weirder and weirder?
Isn't it fun? I'm enjoying it. I mean, heck, you don't got to go to the movies.
No. Just...
Now, I know we had a person that...
I'm speechless this week.
We had a person that talked to us last week about cutting down on He Who Shall Not Be Named, so I'm going to have a different name from now. Anytime we mention him, it will just be 45.
Oh, nice.
Easy.
Nice.
So, really, everybody out there, unless you've been under the proverbial rock, knows exactly what has been going on out there. And it's been fascinating to watch, and I've totally enjoyed it.
Old 45.
Yep.
Can we just hit a Colt 45 sound effect? Hang on.
Because you'd be in jail.
Yaha.
45 Colt.
There you go.
I'll tell you what. The other thing is Colt 45 malt liquor.
Bang, bang.
Oh, I used to love that stuff back in the days. Yes, Ballantine Ale, Colt 45 malt liquor. A few people will know what that means.
Bring it back.
But what can you do?
Stop reminiscing over your drunken days.
Well, no, it's not drunken days. We were never drunk. You couldn't drink till you were 21 in the United States. Yeah, you couldn't. That
didn't stop you, Matthew Adams.
No. We were not that bad at all.
Hanging out in those dingy jazz clubs.
Dingy. Yeah, right, dingy. You had to play most of the time, so you couldn't do any drinking.
Speaking of playing, who's playing this week in the world on the stage?
Goodness.
What's going on?
There's a few things going on in space. There have been some interesting things from a blast in the past that I haven't heard from since the 1990s, who put out a lot of interesting excerpts on Pleiadians and Andromedans and things like that. There have been some interesting things going on as far as military movements in the world. There have been some interesting things insofar as the art world, and the fact that they're starting to now put out a lot of rumors around a certain thing that's near and dear to both of our hearts, Star Wars.
What do you mean rumors?
About what the movie's going to be about, the next one coming up in December.
Oh, is that what you're talking about? I thought you were talking about real world stuff.
No!
I'm like, where are you going with this?
Star Wars, the movie.
All right, I'm with you.
You know, who's what and why. So, there's a few things going on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, we were meant to have a guest on tonight.
Yep.
Due to scheduling.
Yep.
Due to my scheduling with this guest, we've got him next week.
Absolutely.
James Bartley.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to that.
Looking very forward to that.
That'll be fun.
If anybody wants to ask him a question...
Ooh, very good.
Hit us up on Facebook, Beyond 3 hyphen and the letter D.
Put the questions up there and we will add them in.
Add them into the mini list.
Absolutely. But that's really what's going on this week, at least. It's been a fun week, governmentally speaking. It's been a fun week because here in Australia we had our budget stuff go through as well, and people are hemming and hawing over that. There have been... I'm going to put a picture up for you guys to look at that's from back in 96 or so. And this picture, I'm not going to, make no bones about it. It's from the moon. And you got to see it, because if you didn't believe that other beings are on the moon, this picture will make you stand up and go, you've got to be kidding me.
What is it?
A base.
How clear is this picture?
Pretty damn clear.
Okay.
And it's pretty darn big.
Okay.
So you can take a look at that and you can see what you think, but it was fascinating.
I did see a picture this week of a young boy who took a photo of Saturn. And it was an absolutely stunning photo of Saturn, just with a standard telescope. He captured the rings and everything.
Happens.
It was wonderful.
Oh, I love looking at that kind of thing, especially through a telescope. But most people, it's going to start coming around again. Things happen in cycles and in circles. So you're going to start hearing a lot of information in the coming months about the fact that the moon is an actual satellite, and it was dragged here from another galaxy and put in place.
The other week, I played out of our show an excerpt from David Icke being interviewed by Lisa Wilkinson. And in that clip, she turned to him and said, "How did the moon get there?" And she did it in a very disparaging way and disrespectful way, almost talking down to him like he was a child,
Yep.
as if to say, "Come on, tell me it flew." Like she was baiting him. it was very obvious to see how ignorant she was.
Yeah, well, what can you do?
You turn it over. That's what you do. Or turn it off.
But look, let's take a look at the so-called, I'll do the 45 thing, the mainstream media.
Colt 45?
Yeah.
Because you'd be in jail.
Yaha, 45 Colt.
When it comes to anything to do with the origins of our species, the origins of this planet, how long human people have actually been on the planet, mainstream media will laugh and scoff and hardy har at anyone who does not toe the party line, which is the moon has just been up there for a certain amount of time. Some people believe it actually came out of the earth and was blown up from our earth. There's all kinds of interesting theories, but if it is not what they consider to be a scientific theory that can be accepted at the university level and not get you thrown to the fringe and thought of as a whack job,
Hang on.
they're not going to allow it to happen.
I can't stop laughing.
They'll make fun of you.
I heard you say something then, and I've never heard that theory before.
Which one?
The moon was blown out of this planet?
Yes.
What?
There was a volcano-y kind of thing, and this thing spit out of the ocean, and it went up into the sky, and it got
Like
caught in
monkey
orbit.
magic?
Yeah, basically.
No, get out of it.
Oh, look, they want to have some kind of scientific thing that they can say, oh, this is the way it went. They don't want you to even think about the fact that there can be human beings in the Andromeda galaxies, there can be human beings in the Pleiades and in Lyra, and in all of these different, what we call constellations out there, and that these beings have the capacity to be able to tow their own version of the Death Star into orbit around a planet like this one.
And if you want to think a little bit even deeper, and I'm just going to segue a little bit here, but it's all about questioning things. I was looking at a photo the other day of a piece of artwork from the Renaissance period.
Yep.
I just love the fact that Eve is always depicted with a belly button.
Okay, let's get back into that bit. The Genesis theory that's in the Bible there, Adam and Eve. If they talk about Adam and Eve, in my opinion, they are not talking about a single male and a single female in any way, shape, or form.
Weren't the Renaissance painters mathematically accurate with the way they depicted their models in their paintings? So when you're going to that level of detail, why would you mess it up by putting something on there that can't be possible? Like a belly button on Eve.
Well, to me,
going by the
doing,
biblical, if you're going by the Bible, God created Eve, so therefore she should not have a belly button.
out of Adam's rib. Now,
Which comes back to genetics again.
yeah, but what I would say is, being that, as you said, they are accurate, maybe what they're doing is trying to let people know
Thank you, Matthew, because this is where I was going.
it's not as it seems.
It's not as it seems,
Yeah.
just like the moon.
So therefore, you would have to say, where did they come from? Who gave birth to them?
Adamski.
Well, those are some of the things you start thinking about. But this week, it struck a chord around the moon and the things that have been found and the bases that have been found. Remember the guy, what's his name, Alex Collier?
Yes.
Talked about the fact that the Aryans were on the moon, and he wasn't talking about the Aryans from the Krishna Mahabharata.
No, I know who you're
India.
talking about. You're talking
He's
about
the Aryan
the
race.
goose-stepping?
Yeah, the goose-stepping Aryans from Germany and Norway. So he was talking about them having 35,000 people in a base up there, and that was back in the 1990s. He was mentioning that. Secure Team 10 brought that up as well in a video this week. So Tyler did his nice little video.
Jinx, you can't talk.
Yeah. And the other, and I find that very interesting. Some people like Collier, some people don't.
I like anybody that's going to present an alternative view and make you look at things differently.
Make you look at things, but here's the thing. But when you back up something like that and you can have photographs of bases on the moon and you look at the scale of some of these things, you go, wait a minute, what the heck is going on here? Because when you look at the scale, when you look at these pictures, guys, what you have to remember is these are not just taken, about 1,000 feet up in the air. These are taken miles upon miles upon miles above the surface.
Why can't these images be presented at, like, the National Press Club?
Well, I think they can. Personally, I have no problem with it. But
I think the more attention that's drawn to it nationally in the press, the better.
Well, if David Icke were to go on Channel 9 with the lovely people that he was on, and he had taken this picture that I'm talking about, and he presented that to them and said, well, this is from the moon. Please explain to me everything that is here.
I would have shoved that right across Lisa Wilkinson's desk and stabbed your finger on it and looked at her straight in the eye and said, you tell me what that is.
Exactly. Make her do it on national television.
Make her actually have an opinion instead of ridiculing others.
Just say, you tell me what it looks like. You tell me now, you're talking about natural phenomena and all these kinds of natural things. Now you look at this square building over here and this rectangular building over here and this S-shaped building over here and this bridge leading from here to here and these little walkways and roads and everything like that in these craters. And you just say, well, okay, let's see what's actually going on here. Give me your opinion.
Especially when some of those craters are the size of the MCG, the little ones.
Look, guys, we'll put this photo up and you take a look yourselves and you tell us right in the comments section what you actually think these things are. Just look at it and just tell us, what do you think it looks like? We'll find out from there.
Now, Matthew,
Yes?
we got a little bit of feedback the other week about Bentinho Massaro.
Okay.
Some people want more.
Nice. You
So,
have more?
I do have. Look, he has so much more to give.
Fair enough.
I think we should share some more of Bentinho Massaro tonight
Fair enough.
on Beyond 3D.
Yeah, that too.
Beyond
3,
D.
So, Alien Day. So, I will speak to you from a place of experience when it comes to the spiritual stuff, the balances, the cosmic denses, the evolution, the densities, and that combined with intel that I've gathered over the years, that I've checked with my resonance meter and tuned into and downloaded more information about, etc. Who here is skeptical that ETs exist, first of all? Who here is skeptical that extraterrestrial life exists? Who here is skeptical that, although they believe they exist, to think of them as perhaps having the bipedal form and being in contact with us, who's skeptical of that part? I just want to touch upon the context, and that's a good entrance point. Why is it important to even think about it or consider it? You can live your life as you do, and you can go on with your spiritual journey and service to others, but you have to understand a few things that will make this life more in context. One being that a lot of the teachings that not only I teach, but that most beings on Earth teach, have their origin in extraterrestrial contact to begin with. A lot of the spiritual teachings that you may be a fan of and that have helped you along the way usually have some kind of connection to an extraterrestrial consciousness, more or less, depending on the teaching and depending on how much it has become traditionalized by humans over the decades after contact or after that initial influence. Also, even when someone is naturally in tune and naturally speaking, they are not coming up with this stuff using their brain. The brain functions like an antenna. It functions like a radio. It broadcasts and it receives. Does that make sense? And so what do we receive then? It's somewhat important to at least understand that information such as the teachings that I'm sharing with you is a combination of personal experience from this life and heightened intuition and sensitivity from that receptive state. And so when I'm speaking to you, although I am not channeling in the way that perhaps, who here is not at all familiar with channeling, who has no idea what that is? Okay, channeling is the idea that a person enters, there's different ways, but a flow state or a trance state, sometimes a trance state that's so complete to where they completely are not conscious of their body, but they give permission to either another aspect of their consciousness or another being's consciousness to use the biomechanism, that is the body, to translate using the brain and the words and the concept that it has, translating concepts from non-physical into verbal words. It's like another consciousness coming through and using a body as a vehicle to speak, kind of like a telephone. It's very common, we all do it. Again, a lot of the stuff that we see on Earth, not only our teachings, but the very body that you wear, have been due to, they are the way they are. Your body, your mind, the religion, society, civilizations, our structures, our technology. The vast majority of that has been either directly or rather directly been influenced by other civilizations, extraterrestrials. So that's one part of why it is helpful to address this topic, is because a lot of who we are comes from that. So they are not just strangers, they're not as alien as we think they are. A lot of them are directly connected to our genetics. Anyway, you get the point. A lot of our cultures are influenced by that. Religion, I don't think religion would exist if not for our history, our shared history with extraterrestrial consciousnesses. A lot of sources suggest that we have been, in a sense, in many ways, genetically altered, and part of that genetic programming and part of the early on experiences when we became what we know of as the Homo sapiens, and no, we did not gradually evolve from the apes. That part of that programming, or part of that initial conditioning that we received, was to, in a sense, look up to other beings. And so it is in our conditioning, in our historic genetic conditioning, so to speak, to give away our power to something outside of ourselves, to filter spirituality and life through the filter of worship and religion. And so all the religions that we see today, I dare say that 90% of them, if not 100% of them, have been inspired by direct extraterrestrial contact and supported, that behavior further supported by the history, the earlier conditioning of the programming to receive that in a certain way. Part of why this is important is because it also helps you to gain more understanding of how civilization has become the civilization that it is. It's also important as preparation, because it's helpful to be ahead of the curve. It's helpful to be ahead of mainstream. And mainstream will figure this out in the next few years. It will start to become common knowledge. Maybe not everything all at once in the next, say, 2 years, but definitely in the next year, things will open up, things will be disclosed, and from that point onward, it's going to be very hard to have a very slow partial disclosure, meaning that once humanity gets a whiff of something, there will be a large percentage of people curious and open enough to ask the right questions, and by the right numbers, in the right numbers of people. And so there is a disclosure movement happening that is ramping up this very year that will continue in the next, say, decade or so, to unveil our true history as people, as a civilization, as a planet Earth. Not only our history, but also our present and our probable futures. Meaning that we have been, our modern civilization has been in contact with extraterrestrial beings, civilizations, consciously, deliberately, at a governmental level and beyond governmental level, or independent governmental level, or unacknowledged governmental level, since about the 30s. And so this has been kept secret. Why it's also important to know this is because there's a lot of truth out there in terms of technology that we do not have access to, that these particular groups and corporations and alliances do have access to and have had access to for decades. We haven't had to burn fuel or oil in, I think, about 70 years by now, 70, 80 years. And so there is a system going on that is a control system, that is a money system, and that is basically keeping us slaves without calling it that. We're a slave to the system by our own agreement, by our own complacency. In fact, I'm very grateful that all these corporations and that all these entities decided to do all this, because it provides great catalyst for transformation, and I'm very excited about the time to come. And without it, we wouldn't have this catalyst for really standing in our truth and owning what it is we desire to know and who we desire to be as a unified collective people. But I do feel that it is time for a change, and I do feel that it is unfair in a sense, and I do feel that we have to step up to the plate vibrationally and stop being complacent and stop just letting other entities take care of us. Like, we're way too reliant on the government, okay? We're way too reliant on something that does not really give and that doesn't really know how to organize things anyway. And that is so convoluted and so layered that one layer has no idea what the other layer is doing. It's very compartmentalized. It's extremely compartmentalized. And so there's no unison. There's no true representation of the people. There is interest. There is interest in keeping the money with the few, keeping the control and the power with the few. This is not a conspiracy theory, because it's the truth. It's a conspiracy truth. It's conspiracy fact. But I do want you to be aware of certain things so that your context expands itself, and you can start to recognize the things and the events that are going to happen, that are going to be disclosed, the transformation that you'll be seeing in the next few years on planet Earth and in the news and on the internet, so that you have the proper context, at least some of it, to understand where it comes from and where it fits in, okay? So that you can remain in the eye of the hurricane and be of support and not be one of the people that is freaking out or getting angry or whatever. So again, we wouldn't have to use jet engines and rockets, and so it's funny to see things like NASA shooting up rockets, and even Elon Musk with SpaceX, which is sort of like, yay, the next frontier, let's go to Mars, when we're already on Mars, because it's just kind of silly, like the whole thing. So it is time for disclosure. It is time to not let people waste so much effort, so much money, and so much resources, and so much planetary abuse in a way, for something that's completely unnecessary by now. I am in touch with, I don't know who here is aware of Goode. He is one of the insiders that has come out since a year, and his information so far blows everything else out of the water in terms of detail, in terms of far out crazy.
Beyond 3 D.
So why else is it important to know about this type of information, or why else is it appropriate to address extraterrestrial life? Because it gives, again, a bigger context also to our spirituality. There are higher densities than the one we experience. And I'm sure you've all heard different examples of how the next dimension can see the lower dimensions, but the lower dimensions aren't necessarily as aware of or understanding. They can't really grasp or navigate in higher dimensions. Now again, there is higher densities than our present fourth density, early fourth density, which is the vibration, the vibratory state of our planetary sphere, and therefore of our bodies. Our bodies are starting to match that vibration. Above our understanding, above our present grasp, there are higher densities. Consciousness, in a way, is our immediate God. Does that make sense? Evolution, using free will, is allowed to occur, but it tends to follow certain blueprints. Now, one of the blueprints of our galaxy, for example, is that the bipedal form is a natural form that most different kinds of species start to evolve into as they graduate through the different densities from first to second to third to fourth, etc. The bipedal form is, according to this blueprint, a highly conducive form for the different combinations of energies and circuitry that is required for a consciousness to be able to experience the world in a certain way. One strategy that has been applied is what Stephen Greer calls psychological warfare, which is the idea that in order to keep the masses doubt these things and ridicule these things. Ridicule is the most powerful thing, right? Basically fear. If you can utilize the fear of the people, insecurity, nobody will ever stand out and believe anything else because it'll be ridiculed. But basically, if you feed everyone the image of small little green guys with large eyes, so a lot of the media that we've been fed is to keep us enslaved in this paradigm of ridicule. So we are at the same time becoming more familiar with the way the universe looks out there other than us. And what are the odds? Obviously, well, I don't even have to share this whole thing. Like, obviously, ETs exist because of just the massive nature of this galaxy and nothing being random. If there's trillions of bodies of planets and stars and galaxies out there, obviously that's not just created out of randomness. Every single one of these star systems has purpose, and so life develops, evolves. Sometimes it's planted, sometimes it's modified, genetically altered, so that it can increase and step up its evolution. Why this is relevant again as well is because it helps us to understand higher densities. Another reason to consider it is because you might be afraid of it. You might be psychologically programmed to be afraid of it. You might be conditioned, or you might just have fear of it because you don't know it. So to loosen up that fear, which is required in order for contact to happen harmoniously. So the vision statement is to have an enlightened civilization by 2035 that's ready for interstellar absorption. What does interstellar absorption mean? It means that we reach a level of maturity to where we as a collective are able to be contacted openly without it freaking us out anymore, without it needing to be kept secret anymore. We have become more and more our own government, our own unity of people. And we're awake enough, we're high vibe enough, so to speak, to have these open contact experiences and to be absorbed into the interstellar, call them alliances, etc., the interstellar world. It's literally like upgrading from, and this is a natural evolution that happens on most any planet to most any civilization at some point. First they grow up, they're amoebas and they move towards the light, they become plants, they become animal life forms, and then they become an intelligent, somewhat intelligent civilization. And they start to usually develop the bipedal form in third density, regardless of what the species are. That's why you sometimes hear about reptilians that look like human shape. Sometimes you hear about birds, avians, felines, whatever. So it sounds very fantastical, but if you understand the blueprint of creation in this universe, or at least this galaxy, then you can understand that physical form, like I said, will follow the patterns of the energetic blueprint that is there. And the energetic blueprint just so happens to be that that's the most conducive form for a lot of civilizations, for a lot of expressions of the Creator to grow up into. Okay, so we just happen to have naked skin and hair on our heads and nowhere else, and so this is the way we look, this is what we're used to. But you can imagine bipedal forms with different kinds of skins and textures and shapes and functionalities and senses. Okay? But that it's a natural stage of evolution in almost every species, is to go from becoming one people, becoming one civilization on that planetary sphere, to suddenly expanding and opening up past third density, usually at the end of third density, opening up to this entire interstellar galactic highway of connections and alliances and themes and purposes and missions and quests and explorations. So then, naturally, when that starts to become brittle, when the sense of separation and the veil of secrecy starts to fall apart. And this is what you see all around the world. And those powers that be, and that have been very successful and powerful at keeping that secrecy, you can literally see that power slipping away from them. But the main reason is because the Earth's vibration itself, the planetary sphere that we're on, is entering into the fourth density cycle of its sort of cosmic rotation. And so, like clockwork, this is what's happening, whether we are ready or not. Okay? And so, what you see is that this veil is starting to be penetrated very rapidly. Every year it becomes more rapid. It's falling apart. And the structures that be, that depend on secrecy, that depend on delusion, that depend on stupid people, are losing the very thing that allowed them to do what they're doing. And so they're sort of scrambling together their remaining resources and intentions and groups, and they're trying to hold down the fort, so to speak. It's falling apart. Okay, the paradigm, the regime is crumbling. We've already had a first world order. We've already had a power alliances of groups that are quite literally deciding what you are aware of. But that is, again, because of our own complacency. It's because of us needing to evolve, take our responsibility as creators. This would never have happened if we were as hypnotizable as we are. Okay, that's why these teachings are also important. That's why this information is helpful. So now, a civilization starts to realize that the only way for it to advance is to create some kind of union, some kind of understanding that, yes, there is many people on this planet, and we have to somehow, and we want to somehow, live together. We want to understand each other. We want to have compassion. We want this to be harmonious. And so this is the threshold. This crucial, exciting time in a civilization's history where it becomes an interstellar civilization. It starts to unify its people and then open up to interstellar absorption. I call it absorption because it's not interstellar exploration. A lot of it is already explored. At least the things that will initially be exposed to is already documented, known for a long time. It's already been scientifically utilized, applied to, etc. So we're going to be absorbed initially into different confederations, or rather alliances, of civilizations that are of fourth density or higher in most cases. And we will be taught a lot. There will be a new type of education. There will be a very exciting type of school, which is the school of life itself, the school of creation itself, the school of our galaxy itself. And so we will start to be taught in these matters, in these facts, and the truth of our history, which is far more weird than you might think presently, than you read in the history books in the slave system that we call school, mandatory school as it is now. Don't put your kids in school, even if it's illegal. Just don't do it. And for many, it is a very relevant experience, and it is very helpful, and it is very exciting. But there's a lot of kids that don't want this, and they'll literally make themselves sick to not go to school. Okay, they'll literally postpone their lives because they have to go to school. It's a slave system. Okay, there is a law that is highest, which is free will. There's no government that could ever take this away. There's no entity, there's no legalities that could ever take this away. Free will is paramount. Now, I'm not saying not to be smart about it, okay? But one of the exciting things we're going to realize is that this civilization and the way it's structured and the governmental structure is going to completely be turned inside out, okay? There's going to be a coup. There's going to be a revolution where we, the beings, gain so much more freedom and information and knowledge and awareness and possibilities and exciting options to follow, exciting breadcrumb trails that we weren't ever even aware of, where we really start to feel like we are our own governance. We are the law. I mean, it sounds dangerous, but it's been made to sound dangerous for a reason, because they don't want you to realize it. But you have to understand that you are the law.
Beyond 3 D.
Open your eyes, okay? Open your eyes. This is a man-made world that you've that you've been taught and conditioned to perceive. Almost any single concept, any random thought you have at any given day is is given to you, okay? And they want it that way. Fear of survival, ensuring survival. And because we're so afraid, because we aren't mature in that way, we are highly, highly manipulative. Highly manipulative. We're so manipulative that we won't realize we're manipulated. Okay, this is again why this information is relevant. You need to wake up to the structures that exist around you. You're powerful, you're free, you're the only one that creates your reality, that chooses which parallel reality you experience. Everything you experience is your own subjective consciousness energy projected into the sphere of beingness that you are. Why would you generate the illusion within your sphere of governance, within your creation, that there is another entity that exists independent from your own experience, that somehow needs to take care of you, and when they don't, you complain, and you vote for the other candidate? While both candidates are, usually, not always, put in place for you. It's a show, okay? Apparently Donald Trump isn't, so it's kind of exciting. He's just a maniac. But look into the eyes and see the 99.9% secrecy that is there. Okay? So if you think you're choosing for that particular party, you're not. Okay, you're not choosing for anything but control. Alright? Either way, you're That's why this is the best election that has ever happened, in my opinion. Because there is no good option whatsoever, not even remotely, okay? Don't vote. Don't vote. The system, okay? Let it take care of itself. Let it collapse. Stop participating in the hypnotism. Stop feeding the system. Start making it understand that it's losing control even more rapidly. Because that's what's happening, and this is a perfect reflection. This candidacy race, rat race, is the perfect resemblance of where we are at as a people. We are ready for change. We are ready for self-governance. We are ready to recreate our civilization from the people, by the people, for the people. We are ready for a government that is nothing more but a body of administration that truly represents the people and is represented by the people, not by certain groups. That's what we're ready for. That's what we are going to create over the next 20 years. Gradually, but this year will be an epic year of change, transformation, and shock and awe. Okay, so this is a very exciting year. Next year is also going to be very exciting, don't worry. The year after that is going to be even more exciting, but comparatively to how previously, it's almost like you have to believe this before you see it, okay? This is the year where you start to see the that the new agers of you have already been suspecting. So some of it is going to be validated. So it's going to be nice. Just take that as a compliment and move on. But some of your suspicions are going to be proven correct. And it's going to open Pandora's box, okay? It's going to open a can of worms for the powers that be. It's not going to be able to be sustained or maintained. They will try to maintain the majority of the secrecy, and they realize they have to come out with some information because there's no other way. People are going to find out anyway. So they're going to try for partial disclosure, gradual partial disclosure. So part of this disclosure movement that is happening, that is accelerating, and which I hope to be a crucial part, if necessary, of the whole alien thing. I want us to understand, grasp more, how the polarities of service to self and service to others, how they dance with each other, and how that dance is not only crucial for evolution, but it's enjoyable. Everything that gives us a boost of like, that was exhilarating, I now know more of who I am and what I desire and what this is all about, comes from opposition, comes from challenge, it comes from a play, a dance of polarities. This is embedded in the universe. You find it throughout the densities, okay? At least up to 6th density. Then it takes on a different form. Then everything is combined. The game of polarity ends and everything turns towards the foreverness, the infinite of the Creator, back into merger, so to speak. But anything up to 6th density, mid-6th density, even late 6th density, there is the game of polarities embedded in the structure, the blueprint of our universe. So this whole story that, sorry Stephen Greer, that some people have of beyond this density there are no service to self entities, it's simply not true. Okay? There are service to self entities beyond this density. It's not like we reach heaven at the end of this third density cycle and everyone is kumbaya for the remaining 4 densities and nothing happens. So this might come to a little bit of a paradigm changer for some people. They might think that once we reach the age of enlightenment, it's all cookies and fluff and rainbows. And in a sense it is. Why? Because we will be so powerful in what we choose to experience that we can choose whatever we want to experience. That does not mean that we're not aware of other options out there that we might not choose, but that some of us might choose to interact with from time to time, or sometimes more in a more engaged way, to expand, to learn, to exchange information. But you have to visualize it in a way. Visualize the negative entities, the service to self-oriented groups of this planet, okay? Now visualize a community like this, which proclaims to be all about the light and service to others, which we are. That's our role to play. That's what we do. That's what's required at this time. Imagine them abusing each other, battling each other out, and in between lives, being absolutely in love with each other. Because that's what it's like, okay? That's what's happening. We're playing roles. It's a chess game. It would be no fun if the chess game consists of one party. It wouldn't teach you anything. So we are part of a chessboard, and planet Earth in particular is a chessboard with many, 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 many different players. Many, many, many different teams, which makes it very rich for learning, very rich for empowering yourself, not disempowering yourself. So that's really what I want to bring out there. I want to expose this as freely and as widely as we can, that this is the journey of empowerment, and that this is the time of great empowerment, collective empowerment, and that this has to come with love and acceptance and forgiveness. Otherwise it's not empowering. So, again, Eye of the Hurricane, I trust you all to hold that vibration, to hold that balance, so that when the time comes, you can be of support vibrationally to this earth. Okay? Because there will be a time of confusion, naturally. Imagine those that are really, really unconscious about who they are. They're just going through the slave system of the 9 to 5, and their kids are in school still. Imagine them receiving this information. They will not compute, okay? Imagine, no offense, your average redneck. Let's just use a demographic so everyone has an image of it. And they watch the news, and they watch their favorite action show, and they go to bed, and there's no awareness during that day, okay? No conscious awareness. Now, awareness is always there. Just all levels of consciousness are always active. But the conscious mind it's not downloading into its synapses. It's not wiring itself for awakening, for disclosure, for the truth. It is living in a very small world, and yes, the majority of people still live this way, okay? And it's okay. That's just the way it is. But imagine what happens to a brain like that, to a life like that, when they hear that our government has been in contact with ETs for the past 80 years, that we have bases on the moon, a bunch of slave colonies on Mars, that we have been mining the asteroid belt, that we've been colonizing areas of our galaxy outside our solar system, that we haven't needed fossil fuels since that time, 80 years, that we have anti-gravitic mechanisms, that the whole system, the whole money-based system is a slave system put in place deliberately, consciously by some really smart service to self people. Imagine those that carry the American flag with them everywhere they go, realizing that it's been one big fraud and that the Nazis won the war after all. You'll learn about this. It shifted from the visible to the secret, but the Nazis won the war, okay? The United States government gave up their control, their governance, so that we would not be exposed to free energy devices. That's it. So that we would not take back our money, our governance, and operate freely. So that we would no longer be controlled. You see, if free energy gets released, and we're working on it, if free energy gets released, it changes everything, okay? Everything. Awareness, disclosure, navigation, movement, policies, air regulations, things you can't even imagine, the power shift that will occur. And we've had free energy for 80 years. Longer in some cases. For 80 years. Okay. People in Africa still live the way they do. People in poor countries still live the way they do. We still live the way they do, which is actually worse, the way we live, in some ways. We have been fracking, meaning fracturing, breaking down our earth, polluting it, putting poison in it, extracting all of its blood. You know, it's bleeding everywhere for the past 80 years at an exponential rate, going from 1.5 billion people to 7 billion people in, I think, a matter of 100 years or so. Everyone driving 1 or 2 cars. So by no way am I clean, but what I'm focusing my attention on is making the really big changes. And we have to realize that this has been kept secret from us. We have to at least acknowledge that, not go like, oh, that's negative, let's not go there. No, let's acknowledge for a second the secrecy and the control and the enslavement and the delusion that has been cast over us as a people. Realize and feel the suffering of billions, unnecessarily so, not in the greater scheme of things, but relatively speaking, unnecessarily so. Being kept stupid. We're being deliberately kept very, very stupid. Okay, the amount of intelligence, information, awakeness, and harmony that we could have achieved in the past 80 years, that we have literally been missing out on, is insane. We would have a different civilization if that would have come out at that time. And it's would have, should have, could have. There's parallel realities where it did. So we chose this one for our own journey because it's exciting. So I'm not blaming anything, but just realize this for a minute. Realize the gravity that comes with disclosure. So I understand that it has to happen somewhat gradually. Now I don't agree with the partial 100-year term disclosure, which is what some of these alliances are trying to orchestrate, which is impossible, by the way. They can't do that. Even if they think they have the systems in place for a partial, gradual 100-year disclosure, it's impossible because of the energy acceleration that's happening. Will be completely transparent far beyond 100 years, far before 100 years from now, okay? More like 20. So I agree with a partial disclosure, with more a balanced disclosure, a gradual disclosure, but rather rapid, and preparing people, educating people in the right way. Again, imagine the redneck mind carrying the American flag, being a patriot, being, nationalistic, believing in his country, America, and then hearing that America hasn't existed since the 40s. Nazi Germany did. It has nothing to do with Germany, by the way. It's just a particular society that has been very clever in service to self, and that has had the right resources and the right connections to other beings that allowed them to have leverage over the United States. Again, you'll find out more of this, and more of this information is in the Cosmic Disclosure series that is hosted by Gaia.com.
Beyond 3.
Check it out if you're interested. It is far out there. It will take you a little while to assimilate all this information into a package that makes sense to you. Project Paperclip is a document that has been released at some point or leaked that proves that right after World War II, I believe, we took all the best scientists. Basically, we recruited all the best scientists from the Nazis, and they started working with the US government to hopefully win the race to the moon, in a way, to win a race of power, of energy, of vehicular acceleration, etc. So it didn't quite go the way they thought it was going to go. Anyway, point being that the United States has not existed for a while, okay? As the founding fathers said, that has not been the case for quite some time, for most of you guys, since before your birth. You've never lived in the United States of America. You've lived in something else. Nazi Germany. The Third Reich. But behind the scenes. Sorry guys to drop all this on you. Now you're prepared. You can assimilate it, you can deal with it, whatever, right? Believe it, don't believe it, doesn't really matter. It'll all become clear naturally, and the facts will be disclosed soon enough. One more thing to touch upon. Personally, I really feel that one of the first things to come out, is the 9/11 being an inside job. It's really is one of those pillars that they place in their history that will destroy their control, their regime. So, like I said on Facebook, they really with that one. It's really the stupidest idea you can ever think of. Let's demolition. The two biggest towers in the world, pretty much, all the eyes are on it, and let's hope nobody sees that it was not a plane that brought it down. So this I don't know why they were so stupid. Like, it's unlike their cleverness, but it must have been meant to be. It must have been necessary from their eyes. It is definitely necessary in our eyes, because it will shake people up significantly. And this is an event they can relate to. Now, if you're talking about aliens, the rednecks will go, and I'm so sorry, I really don't mean this, but let's say, how do we call people that are not that awake? Americans? Those that still believe America exists? Okay, the people that are not that aware, they will they will not be able to compute. They will not be able to make that connection to their personal lives if we have been engaged with ET civilizations. It's going to be too far out to initially accept. But as part of this disclosure movement, which is organically orchestrated by the increase in energy, what will happen, most likely, in my opinion, is that the 9/11 event will be the most significant change in our collective's understanding of corruption and secrecy, and it will be the hallmark, it will be the marking point of a real shift where the majority of our collective will start to understand and open up to other facts. Because everything leads back to the Nazis. Everything leads back to ET contact. Literally everything leads back to ET contact in the 20s and the 30s, and the technological exchanges and the control systems that really amped up their game at that time. So even something as impactful and as seemingly mundane and terrorist organized, there is no real terrorism, by the way, in my opinion. It's all orchestrated. Don't believe the hype. It's another thing to keep your mind on the lollipop. Lollipop, lollipop. Let's be afraid of terrorism. Yes, let's pass these laws against terrorism. Let's all go through security like 8 times per flight so that the terrorists won't do this. Let's all be controlled. Let's all get our fingerprints. Let's all get a chip in our brain soon, right? So even this is the initial disclosure event, I think, in my opinion. It might be something else. It might be, hey, we actually did find life on Mars in some version. Like, that's also, life, ET life is also going to be disclosed, I feel, most likely this year, if not this year, next year. So, but it will be in a very preliminary form, most likely. But this 9/11 event, every human being can relate to that event. And when they realize that our own governments did that, and that terrorism has been created, an illusion, to pass certain laws and regulations and to gain more control and more power, there's a lot of people that won't accept it, even when they hear it. They will refuse the truth, even though they know it's true. They will refuse it. There's a large percentage of people that will do that for quite some time. It's too much of a worldview, okay? This is like literally shattering your foundation, your home, what you feel kept you safe and took care of you. Your mommy and your daddy abused you, big time. It's all out there. Like, none of this disclosure stuff is new. But there is many, likewise, that have answered a calling. There's many ways to answer a calling of a civilization. One is to show up physically in your own form, and one is, which is the most intimate of ways, the most courageous of ways. Not to beat my own drum, but just in general, just to explain the process of this. One of the most intimate ways is to become, on an expression at personality level, on a personal consciousness level, to become a complete product of the civilization that you wish to answer the calling from, or that you wish to be of assistance in. So what we call incarnation, for example. So that's, we literally take the substance of this density, which is the physicality of it and the mental imprints of it and the collective understanding of it, and we take on with a portion of our consciousness. We take on that vibratory state to such a crystallized fashion where we appear as a physical being with a mind that is created out of this substance, and that has the same limitation, that has the same imprints, that has the same challenges in a sense. And then to the only difference in that sense being that there is a higher probability for remembrance. There is a brightness that in a sense kind of protects the being from completely being soaked up in this vibration. There's so many people that share, ever since I was a kid, I knew everything was possible, I knew I could fly, I knew I wanted to love, I didn't understand how people worked and operated, etc. I felt way too sensitive for this world, all that stuff. Now again, there's not many, well there is many in a sense, but it's that's why it's so intimate, that's why it's such a service, because it doesn't always happen that someone remembers that well. So it's kind of a courageous act to want to be of service to such an extent, and of course it serves them too in many ways, to become a portion of the civilization in that way, in such an intimate way that we can actually speak to you as you. You know, it's such a perfect mechanism, such a perfect way to answer that calling. But there is many, likewise, that have answered a calling. There's many ways to answer a calling of a civilization. One is to show up physically in your own form, and one is, which is the most intimate of ways, the most courageous of ways, not to beat my own drum, but just in general, just to explain the process of this. One of the most intimate ways is to become, on an expression of personality level, on a personal consciousness level, to become a complete product of the civilization that you wish to answer the calling from, or that you wish to be of assistance in. So what we call incarnation, for example. So that's, we literally take the substance of this density, which is the physicality of it and the mental imprints of it and the collective understanding of it, and we take on with a portion of our consciousness. We take on that vibratory state to such a crystallized fashion where we appear as a physical being with a mind that is created out of this substance, and that has the same limitation, that has the same imprints, that has the same challenges in a sense. And then to the only difference in that sense being that there is a higher probability for remembrance. There is a brightness that in a sense kind of protects the being from completely being soaked up in this vibration. There's so many people that share, ever since I was a kid, I knew everything was possible, I knew I could fly, I knew I wanted to love, I didn't understand how people worked and operated, etc. I felt way too sensitive for this world, all that stuff. Now again, there's not many, well there is many in a sense, but it's that's why it's so intimate, that's why it's such a service, because it doesn't always happen that someone remembers that well. So it's kind of a courageous act to want to be of service to such an extent, and of course it serves them too in many ways, to become a portion of the civilization in that way, in such an intimate way that we can actually speak to you as you. You know, it's such a perfect mechanism, such a perfect way to answer that calling. Okay, this has been around for years and decades. None of what I'm sharing with you is new. Some of the gory good stuff has never been revealed before, that's why it's exciting, and it's even more far out there than some of the Dr. Stephen Greer stuff that you hear. But if you want a more introductory thing, again, I've already shared this before, but look up How the Secret Government Works on YouTube by Dr. Stephen Greer, okay? It's an excellent expose, it's an excellent lecture, 3 hour long, it's intense, but it keeps it human somewhat. It talks about ETs, but it shows you proven evidence and documents, etc. So it's a very believable transition. After that, if you're ready for more, go look up Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia.com. If not, if you've had your fair share, just wait a year or so, maybe. Yes, so again, this event, like the towers crumbled, the control structures will crumble, okay? When it's revealed, it's very symbolic. The pinnacle of the US government, you know, one of their main sort of icons, the World Trade Center, United States World Trade Center, crumbled by its own doing. When that gets revealed to the public, everything else will crumble too. Okay? It's already revealed, like she said, very good point. But a lot of people are not of the vibration to attract this, but it will become accepted, it will become shown, it will become proven, it will be revealed, it will be exposed, inevitably at some point. If not this year, if not next year, then the year after. But shortly, fairly shortly, this will be acknowledged as an inside job. And that's when the investigations start. And that's when people will find out why they did that, and why they did that to get to there, and why they did that to get to there, to get to there, and why they did that to there. And then we end up with the Nazis and the UFOs. I guess.
Beyond 3D.
Welcome back tonight to Beyond 3D, Matt.
Well, there you go. More information for you. Let it sink in. Enjoy it. Go to sleep on it. It'll take you out of your body and you'll start traveling the universe. So let's see what happens.
Try and make some of that contact happen.
Indeed. So, with that, we will bid you adieu. Good night for this evening, and we will catch you next week for another edition of Beyond 3D.
Au revoir.
Take care, guys.
So you wanted to challenge me on my French then, didn't you?
Not necessarily. No. Merci, la gars.
Formidable.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.